morning. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello, can you hear us and can you see us? If you can you please type yes in the chat box? Yes, hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So, where are you all based in the world? And what time is it where you are? Because I'm always so interested. You can see me, that's great. Thank you. Hello. So, it is afternoon. It's 10:30 in Qatar. So, good morning to you at 2:30 p.m. in Bangkok. Hello. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Federica and I work at Macmillan. It is such a pleasure for me to welcome you all to this session today with Charlotte Runs. As you can see, she's already in there on screen. Hi, Charlotte. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So it is so great to see such an international audience, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And before I hand over, just a couple of admin information. So, in case you're interested in getting a certificate for attending this session, you will all get a certificate. It will be sent automatically to your email address. You don't need to do anything, just please be patient and do check your spam folder because it does tend to end up in there at times. You will all get a certificate. For those of you who have just joined, welcome everyone. And thank you so much for being here with us today. It is, hello, hi everyone. It's so great to see so many people already. It's 7:30 here in the UK. So it's really great to see that so many of you can be with us today. We're really thankful to the internet for allowing us to meet so many people virtually. Thank you, everyone. So you will all get a certificate. It will be sent automatically to your email address, and you will also get the handout from this webinar. It will also be sent automatically to your email address. You don't need to do anything besides checking your spam folder because sometimes it does tend to end up in there. So we're here with Charlotte Runs. She's a freelancer, a teacher trainer, and an author. She's been in this industry for almost 2 decades, so she's a real gem, a real expert. And as you can see from the chat box, a lot of people already know you and they're really eager to listen to you today. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Charlotte is really interested, like her areas of interest are increasing classroom engagement and also promote ELT learning through reading, which sounds really interesting to me. So I can't wait to listen to you, Charlotte, and everyone is here to listen to you, not to me. So over to you, and thank you so much for being here with us today. If you have any questions, do type them in the chat box, and Charlotte will pick them up and answer to them. Thank you, Charlotte. Over to you.
Thank you, Federica. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I hope we are all happy today. We have a wonderful session ahead of us this morning. For those of you that were in my last grammar session last month, you'll remember that we did a number of activities around background work and understanding the mechanics of grammar acquisition. Today, we are going to be focusing on activities, and maximizing all sorts of production in the classroom. Again, hello again, Oksana. It's so nice. It's so nice to see so many familiar names. I feel like many of you are my only friends this year, all the people I see in my webinars. Thank you so much for attending. Okay, if you are ready, let's get started now. I can tell we can all hear each other. So we're going to start with a question, and what I would like you to do is write your answers in the chat box. And, well, it's not really a question. I'd like you to finish my sentence. How would you finish this sentence? Grammar is what? Can you give me a definition of grammar? Grammar is fun. Lovely. Okay. Grammar is rules. Seema, interesting. The whole system and structure of language or languages in general, taking existing syntax, morphology, brilliant. Grammar is stellar, completely agree. Grammar is language. Yes, someone has written grammar is confusing. I often feel that, especially when I'm looking at grammars of other languages as I learn them. Grammar is what you need. Grammar is a base, your foundation. I like those words. That's really, really important. Language and structures, rules, how to write and speak correctly. Absolutely. It's really difficult to put one definition of grammar down. So, we're going to have a look today about what grammar means. Oh, I love it. Grammar is to English what water is to earth. Ah, grammar is to language as water is to earth, maybe. Okay. All right. So we're going to think, first of all, about what we need to be communicating to young learners. And we talked a little bit last time about meta language and how we can use that. But when we think about young learners, of course, we need to think about what their mental and developmental capacity for understanding is. So, how do we relate grammar back to young learners? A little bit of a refresher to start us off. And then we're going to be looking at three areas: presenting new language, doing our mechanical practice, and of course, encouraging production. And I love this little dog. You will see little line drawings like this throughout the presentation. And this artwork I will talk to you a little bit about later, but it's one of my favorite things in the book that I've taken some of these activities from. So I will be talking to you about the artwork. In the meantime, how many legs can you see on that dog? It is a dog with way too many legs. Okay, so I asked you what grammar is. Let's ask Macmillan what grammar is. So there we go. Here is the definition from the Macmillan Dictionary. And as you can see, a lot of the words in this definition are very, very similar to the words and sentences that you finished off. So the Macmillan Dictionary defines grammar as the set of rules that describe the structure of a language and control the way that sentences are formed. Because English as a language is very syntax based in its grammar. As you all know, an English sentence, we have a very prescribed order that we put things in to make sense of things, our subject, verb, object ordering. It's not true for all languages, but within English, it very much does control the way that sentences are formed. So, what are we doing with it? What do young learners need to know? Three areas of language when it comes to grammar that we talk about teaching as teachers. We teach form, the structure of a grammar item. We think about the way things are spelled. We think about um, my brain's not working because it's 7:30 in the morning. Dear me. We talk about the endings that we add to words to create different forms. We drill into our students how when they're using comparative forms they add er, but we work on the number of syllables. We talk about using the with superlative forms. We teach these little grammatical form elements. We also need to teach use. Why is it there? How do we use it? When do we use it? What's it for? And of course, we have to teach the meaning. Now, a question to you. In the young learner's classroom, which of these three elements would you say is the most important for young learners to know? Of course, they are all important, but when it comes to the younger learners, meaning and use coming out very quickly there. Absolutely. I think that, we can obviously say every single element is important. We need to know all of this. But for young learners, how to use it. What is the use? What is the meaning? When do I need this? Is the most important element of all for the young learners. Of course, we need to work on those forms, but having the children using language at the right time is key. And of course, as we said in our last session, what this means for us is that context is absolutely everything. Children need to be able to understand the background and why they are using the language, what they are using that language for, to be able to remember it, to keep it fresh in their minds, and to use it effectively as well. So, in terms of young learners, a few guiding lights that we try to remember in the classroom. And I'm sure, much like me, all of you are trying to build these in as much as possible. We start with the function, why we are using this. We don't say, today we are going to be studying the past tense. We say, today we're going to talk about things we did last week or things we did last summer. We set the frame, we set that context. The language that is used comes within that. Of course, the greatest way to support young learners is to encourage them to use their natural curiosity. So, providing opportunities to encourage discovery of language. Yes, indeed. As Asha says, if we start giving meanings for the definitions every time, it will become boring. The students should derive their own meanings, they should discover their own meanings. Absolutely, encouraging that discovery within the classroom. Of course, as we know, young learners learn very, very quickly, but they forget equally as quickly. So, building in lots and lots of opportunities for recycling and revision as much as possible. Lima has made an interesting point down there. My father advised me to acquire the rules in a natural way. Absolutely. And when we learn our first language, we don't learn rules of language mechanically. We learn them experimentally. We learn them through discovering. We learn them through echoing, through listening and mirroring as much as we can around us. And of course, when it comes to those classroom activities and our online activities, and even independent study for young learners, the key tool is to make it fun and engaging, as Dulfia says, indeed. All right, so let's have a look at an exciting selection of different fun things that we can do in the classroom to ensure that our young learners are getting as much out of their English lessons and their literacy lessons as possible. Okay, oop, why is my computer being there? There we go. So, in our last session, and if you weren't in our last session, you can find the recording online if you want to go back and revisit it. We were talking a lot about modelling of language from teachers and how important it is that even in an international context where we're teaching in a classroom with a majority language from the students, it's really, really important for the teacher to act as much as possible as that model of language. Um, of course, in an international context, we are always challenged by the different levels and different abilities of the students that come to us. We often have a mix of some native or native like speakers within our classrooms, adding in students who have recently joined the international education sector who may well not have quite the same standard or even the same opportunities at home. Because of this, as teachers, we are constantly modeling. And another key thing to remember when we are presenting new language is making sure that we have got as many samples available to our students of good English as possible. Now, A question for you. I used to work in a school where it had been recently decorated, and my manager was very against putting any posters or anything up on the classroom walls. We didn't want to ruin the paintwork. Now, for me, this was a huge problem as a teacher because my argument is we need to demonstrate, we need to show, we need to give the children a point of reference. Tell me a little bit about your classrooms. Are they colourful poster places, or do you work in a place that's a bit like that school I used to work in? Do you encourage displays in the classrooms? Brilliant. Great to see that. There we go. Good, bright, colourful classrooms. Good, 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 good. Excellent. Oh, wonderful. You are all so lucky. Um, yes, great. So, yes, as Deepika has just said, it's all about that hands-on learning environment. Soft boards, brilliant, great. Good, 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 good. Interesting. The posters are about moral stuff. Arezu, are these posters in English? Are they demonstrations of good English, would you say? Neutral say shades material. Excellent, wonderful. Good, 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 good. So, as teachers, what we need to remember is that we are presenting a learning environment. That learning environment, there are things that we can do before the students even get there to ensure that we are creating the best foundation for learning to occur. So, classrooms. In our classrooms, things to remember. When we're presenting new language, we want to make sure we've got as many samples of accurate English as possible. That might be books on a library shelf, it might be magazines, it might be postcards, anything with good English in it. Not necessarily for direct use, but there for the student's curiosity. Brilliant. A lot of people talking about displaying student work, and that's excellent. We will come back to that in a minute. Um, Posters, of course, are another amazing reference point, and there are lots and lots of posters available. Um, and often publishers will create and provide posters as well. But one of the things that I like to have in my classroom when it comes to grammar instruction and grammar learning and understanding the mechanics of English is student created posters that we can use throughout the year. So, starting out with almost blank posters in the classroom that we are creating as we go along. We talked a little bit last time about terminology and using the words of language and literacy instruction in the classroom. We talked about, is it useful for children to learn words like conjunction? And in our last session, I think we generally agreed that most of us as teachers use grammar terminology in the classroom. We talk to students about language, and to talk about our subject, we need to use the words to describe things. But what we also discovered was that for many of us, when we're working with young learners, we tend to simplify that. So we don't say things like conjunction all the time. We say connecting words or connectors. We don't necessarily talk about um, action verbs. We talk about doing verbs. We simplify that language. So when we're working with posters in the classrooms, one thing that's always useful to have on display is terminology posters. Having a poster for your naming words, for your joining words, your connecting words, that students can add to as they develop new language. Um, Another poster that can be hugely useful as a point of reference for teachers is things like word family posters. So, very quickly, let's see how awake you are. Take 30 seconds. How many words could we form from the word friend? So we talk about friend, we can talk about friendly, we can talk about friendliness. How many words can you think of approximately that contain the word friend? The Facebook generation has created a lot of new words. So befriend, unfriend, unfriended. He unfriended me. Friendship, indeed. So encouraging students to create posters of word families that you can have on display in the classroom. These become an amazing point of reference when it comes to encouraging noticing of grammar. Um, if you've got a big friend word poster up there and you see the word friendliness written on that poster, as teachers we can use that as a reference point to break it down. So if we're teaching, for example, the word happiness as well, we can bring those comparisons and we can bring those similarities out in the classroom. The other sort of posters that are most useful in the classroom are useful phrases. Phrases that you have created, phrases that you have selected that are appropriate for the age group, that will enable children to talk about language that we can always use as a point of reference. Um, I think that the golden rule of teaching in the young learner's classroom is ensuring success. We want to be building children up. And the more we say, yes, that's good, and let's move on to the next thing, rather than, incorrect, let's move down, let's knock it, making it as possible for our students to succeed as possible. Yeah, making it important to success. I see. We can see that Ethelinda has pointed out that you're using the phrases in the science subjects as well. Absolutely, we use these tools in all subjects to ensure success in the young learner's classroom. We want them to succeed because success brings positive mental attitude. Success brings an I can feeling in the classroom. It builds that mindset of success in the classroom. So, enabling our students to do as much as we can, putting points of reference around, will make an excellent foundation for learning. Now, as a student, I feel a lot of difficulty in understanding and producing future perfect continuous sentences. Oh, yes. Um, what is the solution? Um, you know what? English is really flexible. There's always another way. So if you find that you are struggling with them, find an alternative method. We can always escape. But with anything, practice, practice, practice. Okay. So we've talked a little bit already, but I'd like you to imagine that you are starting a new lesson. Have a look at this piece of text. What grammar do you think we are teaching in this lesson? Read it through. What do you think is the focus of this lesson? Now, this is a little paragraph that was taken from a book called Grammar Rules. It's Grammar Rules Level 2. It's quite colourful, it's quite engaging, and you will enjoy. Ooh, lots and lots of things that we are getting. But Juhi has nailed it. We are looking at interrogatives. We are looking at questions in this. There we go. Oh, yes, brilliant. Yeah, we are looking at questions here. Now, as we were saying in the previous slide, classroom displays are a great tool for teachers to be able to point out what's happening around the classroom, giving reference points for children to look at and to bring into their classroom. And this is equally as true within the learning. Chinmayi seems to be having some difficulty. Always best to log out and log back in again if you are having connection issues. Um, and using Chrome, absolutely. Good point there, Federica. Yes, so we are encouraging children through guided discovery. Now, do we all know what we mean by guided discovery? as we can see from our chat box right now, if I just turn around and say to anybody, oh, okay, what do you think we're studying here? On this piece of text, there are a lot of options that we could be doing. Who does the guiding and guided discovery? And who does the discovering? Absolutely. There we go. The teacher is the facilitator. So, what we're doing is we are selecting pieces of work, pieces of text, videos, images, etc., that will support the use of a specific item of grammar or an item of vocabulary or a word type or a sentence structure. Yes, you do get access to the webinar later. We will have a link sent out. Um, so here, what you find in grammar rules is that each of the lessons will start with some form of guided discovery. And in this case, we are asking our students to identify questions. Now, putting the text just on the screen, this is not necessarily enough. We need to give some extra support, some extra scaffolding. So what we also do is we provide rules. So what can we learn here? A question asks for information or an opinion. There's a fact about it. It ends in a question mark. 2 examples. So by providing the text and the support there, we're encouraging children to be able to go in and we can say, okay, I'd like you to quickly read through this text. How many questions can you find? They can use that new information, they can go off, and we can find out whether or not they are using those rules to guide them through. Now, as much as possible, allowing children to use that natural curiosity will build that motivation in the classroom. As before the session started, we were talking to Federica, and she was pointing out that people don't like to be told about what they are doing; they like to do what they are doing, and I think that's very true. So, as teachers, when we are starting our lessons and saying, okay, today we are going to learn this, this, and this, and we start and we lead with the rules, sometimes we can lose those students. If we flip that around, if we give them the opportunity to go and find things out for themselves, to use their natural curiosity, we're increasing that motivation and that engagement. We're increasing the interest within the student to learn more and to practice more and to use more. So, wherever possible, careful, guided discovery of learning. Um, it's very, very tempting a lot of the time, especially in an international classroom where our students are so high level, to take texts that potentially are not designed for a purpose. But with guided discovery, as a teacher, it's a very, very important thing to do. Then, oh, Ethelinda, that's lovely. Thank you. Um, oh, you're so nice. Very, very important for teachers to make themselves a checklist when they're searching for good examples of language to use. Ask yourself, what do I need the children to identify today? Are there enough examples within this text? You'll notice here there are only 2 questions in the text, even though we are looking at how we form questions, because this is an introduction. So we're just using this as a guided discovery. We've told them a question mark is added at the end of an interrogative sentence. How many can you find? It's a nice simple starting point. The volume needs to be enough that they can notice and find them, but not too much that it becomes overwhelming. So, making ourselves a checklist, what do we want them to find? How many examples do they need? Is the vocabulary the right vocabulary? Is the context the right context? And for a classroom full of maybe 7, 8-year-olds, You know, a text that talks about people that care for animals. This is a good context. There's a useful background and an interesting background there. Absolutely. As Sole says, pay attention to the new vocabulary. Is the vocabulary age appropriate? Is the vocabulary um, eh, high frequency enough to make it useful, or is it full of unuseful words that the children don't need? Look at those language items that you're using, but as much as possible, give them the opportunity to discover for themselves. Right. Now, the other thing that we need to do when it comes to providing opportunities for discovery and guided learning is to encourage that through play. Now, if you've been to one of my grammar sessions before, you might have seen this activity because this is one of my favorite grammar activities for young learners. What do we notice here? What can you tell me about the words on the screen and the colors of the cards? Anyone notice anything specific about these? You've got the sentence. Excellent. Ah, yes, there we go. Green is for verbs. Brilliant. Excellent. So what can we say then? Red is for articles. Brilliant. Prepositions, what color do they come? Orange. LA. Punctuation. What color's that? Punctuation is yellow. Brilliant. And our nouns are blue. There we go. Good. Excellent. So now it doesn't matter what color you choose for what type of speech. What matters is that you in your classroom are consistent. Okay. Don't change those colors with every different activity. We need consistency. What we're doing here is providing that concrete guidance. So when, as a child in a classroom, when I get familiar with these activities, I know it's always that. In Miss Charlotte's lesson, every time all of the verbs are always green, all of the nouns are always blue. And we can split these off. So later on, as their grammar develops, we can start maybe using navy blue for proper nouns, light blue for abstract nouns, turquoise for concrete nouns. We can split that out, keep it within that same color scheme. But your color scheme, completely up to you. Just make sure it's consistent. Now, what do you think is happening with this activity, this sentence builder activity? How would I do this in the classroom, do you think? Any ideas? You'll see there's a little envelope there. Yep, wonderful. We make the sentences, indeed. So in a physical classroom, the way that I use this, I will make up a number of sentences. And what I do is I take the sentences from the book. So if you remember our previous slide, we were noticing our questions. What I then do is I will take the questions from the mechanical activity, put them onto cards, cut them up, pop them into envelopes. One envelope per sentence. And then what I would do for the groups, I will give each group a different envelope with a sentence. They take it out, they work it round. When they think they're ready, they shout, "Teacher, teacher." I will come, check their sentence. Yes, correct. They fold it back up, put it back into the envelope, pass the envelope to the next group, take a new envelope to work on. In an online classroom, slightly less tactile, but what you can do is create these homework sheets that you can get them to print out and create their own questions. And just simply, instead of putting it onto the coloured card, you can use the different coloured inks to sort that out. You can encourage them to build and create their own. You could even do the prep work and send that home to parents as well. And it can be quite a nice thing to do, as a nice homework review activity. Encourage the child to sit down with the parents or with an older sibling and to play racing games with them for creating sentences, building up their vocabulary. Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, you can do it that way. Alternatively, if you're teaching with Zoom, you can use this for breakout groups. So, you can simply send an image just like this one through those breakout groups. And when they have created their sentence, they can send that to you as typed in, and you can send them the next picture and the next image. So, they can work just with that visual and working groups together within those breakout rooms. It's slightly more clunky, but it does work. And yes, indeed, absolutely ask them to create their own cards and encourage them to do so, because the process of making those cards is also learning. They have to think to themselves, like, okay, I want you to make a stack of cards. Find the verbs, put the verbs on the green card. It's that extra little bit of mechanical thinking practice that goes into the doing of the activity that pushes them even further and makes that learning even deeper. So, yes, absolutely, do ask them to create their own cards and encourage them to play games with their parents, with their older siblings, uncles, aunts, grandparents, whoever. It's all good fun. And the parents like it too. Okay, so moving away from that presentation and that guided discovery. Yes, agreed, Jennifer. Definitely get them to create their own sentences as well. Although, as we know, some students might be more creative than others. Excuse me 1 second. My huge cup, almost the size of my head. You need this much tea at this time in the morning. Okay, better. Right. So guided discovery and guided presentation and opportunities at the very beginning as they are developing those foundations and getting to grips with the new ideas, having as much involvement as possible is brilliant. But of course, as teachers, we understand the value of practice. And mechanical practice of new forms, new structures is incredibly important. Um, when we develop and learn new language knowledge, it takes a long time from when we first hear or see, when we first encounter a new structure. It takes a long time for that fully to process in our brains to enable us to be able to present it back, to use it effectively. So, making sure that we have lots and lots and lots of opportunity for mechanical practice, for practice where there is definitely a right or wrong answer, is so important. And there are lots and lots and lots and lots of things that we can do. Of course, if we want to get them practicing the same language again and again and again, we're going to need to use the same vocabulary items, but we don't need to do it in the same way. We can keep the language point the same, but change the way that we present it. And one activity that I really like to do in the classroom is an activity called Secret Improv. Um, I stole this a few years ago from the teacher's book of grammar rules, and it's been a firm favourite for me ever since. So you'll notice here, once again, we've got different coloured card to represent different types of speech. We've got adverbs and verbs. And as we can see here, what we're practicing is the position of adverbs in a sentence and how we use them. So this is a pair work activity. Student A brings out one card of each colour. Okay, they read their cards, and then what they need to do is they need to demonstrate. So here we've got speak and we've got quietly, and they would show their friend the action. So you might find your children in the classroom going, excuse me, do you know where the cinema is? Like this. Student B then needs to create a sentence which uses the correct adverb and verb. How they form that sentence is up to them. So you might find them. They might say the card says speak quietly. Fine. Or they might say something like, you are speaking quietly. That's fine as well. As long as they are identifying the verb and the adverb that are being used, that's brilliant. And this is another one that actually does adapt pretty well to Zoom and online teaching, because what you can do is you can ask the children to create their own cards, and it makes it even more of a surprise. So if you're working with a course book, for example, it's like, okay, I want you to look at um, using have a look at the unit we have just finished. So have a look at unit 7 and choose 6 verbs from the unit that you have learnt. Write them on your card. Okay, go back to unit 7. How many adverbs can you find? I want you to choose 6 adverbs from the unit and put them on a different color, and you put them into your box. So your partner does not have any idea what's in there. um, I am not familiar with the teacher's pet font, Jennifer, but my guidance on fonts would be that we need to remember that certain fonts are less legible to certain students. In my classroom, I try always when I'm writing on the board to print as much as possible, just because it's clearer and it's easier. And when I use printouts, I generally use as close to printed text as possible, just because it's clearer and it's generally easier for people with learning difficulties or special educational needs to read as well. So yeah, accessibility is the key, but I'm not familiar with Teacher's Pet, so I couldn't comment on it as a specific font. I'm now very curious though, so I'm going to learn that. Okay. So, secret improv, great fun, and there's so much space that you can do. But what it is mechanical practice. Another great practice activity that I'm sure some of you have used over the years is the alphabet challenge, sometimes known as categories. But you'll notice here that many of my categories across the top are parts of speech. So we've got verb, we've got adjective, we've got adverb, we've got girl's name, we've got boy's name, we've got a proper noun as a place and a common noun as a place. So we are identifying those parts of speech. Now, what I would like you to do, I am going to give you a letter of the alphabet. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, you don't need to type this in the chat box. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, I'd like you to make a note of one word for each of these topics using the letter T. The letter T for tango. So with verb, you might have trip, you might have travel. For adjective, you might have, tiny, that's a good one. Uh, for adverb, you might have, can I think of an adverb starting with T? Ooh, can anyone think of an adverb starting with T? I hope you can. Um, yes, girls' names, boys' names, etc. Brilliant. Okay, now, stage tightly. Perfect. Thank you. You saved me. Okay, so brilliant. Lots and lots of words coming out. And as Asha has said, there we go. Asha's one step ahead of me. Once we have filled out these boxes, the challenge is then tenderly, what a lovely word. The challenge is then to get the students to create one sentence using all of those words. So Asha has very kindly given us the example of Suri and Sam smartly skipped at Sydney Shopping Centre, which is perfect. Absolutely brilliant. So, remembering we're not just listing and learning the vocabulary, we need technologically is a very good adverb. Um, we need to give them the opportunity to create these as sentences as well. For the grammar practice to really kick in, we need to take it that step past the vocabulary. Yes, we've identified the parts of speech, and as a teacher, I can check that. You know, I can see they've put a capital S on their proper noun. That's good. But with the grammar, we need to take it that next step and bring it along and encourage them to create those sentences for themselves, to practice that syntax, to practice building sentences for themselves. So, lovely little activity there. We've all played variants of it. This variant, again, comes from Grammar Rules. Now, we can be creative and we can, come up with lots and lots of things, but it's also important to remember that we have lots and lots of support available to us, especially for mechanical practice activities within the books we use. And some teachers look at activities like this and go, oh, for my students, it's very, very boring. We don't like doing this. I will do it quickly, or I will do it for homework. Or, we don't necessarily encourage them to take it in a seriousness that it deserves. If we have lots and lots of mechanical practice activities as teachers, we can worry, oh, my students will get bored, my students will get bored. Mechanical practice is incredibly important. Yes, sometimes a student might feel bored if we are doing lots and lots of practice activities. My job as the teacher is to find a way to make it a little bit less boring. So, do spend your time. Nida has asked, if there are so many students in our online classes, how shall I listen to all sentences? And Althea has pointed out through the chat box, that's exactly the answer that I would give. You don't have to hear the sentences. You can just quickly ask them, type your sentence into the chat box. Because when we're looking at syntax, when we're looking at sentence structure, we don't need to hear it to be able to see if it's correct. And then maybe if you like, you can choose one or two students for each type of activity and say, okay, all right, Nida, can you read your sentence? Nihal, can you read your sentence? And you just choose two or three of them to say their sentence out loud. With the next activity, we choose two or three different students to speak out loud. But yes, use the chat box for the sentences. And then you as the teacher, you've got the ability to be able to read through them, to visually check and make sure. Well done, Joel. Very good. Yes. Leica ate her dinner and then she licked her lips. Indeed. Good, 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 good. So, spending time on these practice activities. One thing that you can do to make them a little less boring is encourage the students to create their own or change the ones in the box. So, what I sometimes like to do with my students, get a bottle of Tipex in the books and you say, okay, right, we don't have any Leicas or any Ralphs in my classroom. So I want you to take your Tipex and I want you to change the names in the sentence to somebody in this classroom. So we can say, okay, Joel the dog sat under his favorite tree while he waited for dinner. Toto ate, brought a new lunchbox and took it to school. Encourage them to change things, to personalize things. That can be one way to make the activities in the book more engaging. Get them to fully create their own. Use different methods to engage the students, but remember to spend the time on that mechanical practice. Because without the mechanical practice, we can't get the production. Practice makes perfect. Practice builds confidence. Practice helps us remember. So do spend that time. If you are worried that your students are bored, think of a way you can make it a little bit more exciting for them. Okay, now when it comes to encouraging production, there are lots of factors that we need to take into account, but we can summarize these in 3 ways. When it comes to production, we need to have the language knowledge. If we don't know the words, if we don't know the structures, we cannot produce them. We need the language. We need the opportunity. So we need time for students to work in pairs, to work in groups, to maximize their speaking time. We need to give them preparation time, brainstorming time, to be able to get their ideas and thoughts in order. And we need to give them a motivation to want to speak. 3 things we need. So, opportunities for questioning, opportunities for drama, for role play, giving children all of the concrete language that they need, a fun way to practice it, and time to do that. Very, very key moments. If we can get these factors in, the production in the classroom will always be good. You lot are too sweet. Stop it. You distract me with all your compliments. You are too nice. What's Nihal saying? I think the teacher shouldn't focus on memorizing rules of language in a very natural way. Teaches English as a second or foreign language through grammar translation method. Focus on memorizing rules. Teachers using direct. Yeah, yeah. Um, Grammar translation, there's a time, there's a place for it. There are moments, especially if you're in a monolingual classroom, where it can be very, very useful. Moments. As an entire methodology, it's not going to be the most useful or productive way of doing things, because it simplifies things too much. Language, we there's a reason we talk about language art. Language is creativity. Language is poetry. Language is music. Language is novels. You know, it is an art. And when we only use a grammar translation method, it takes the soul, it takes the passion, it takes the experimentation away from it. There are moments when grammar translation is useful, but those moments are not very common. We're much better off using the opportunities to create new language in the classroom than we are just constantly translating. But that's my opinion. That does not necessarily mean the right thing. Okay, so production. Um, Lovely little activities that we can use, such as the memory word chain. So here's a couple of examples of a memory word chain. I went to the zoo and I saw a bear. I went to the zoo and I saw a bear and a zebra. I went to the zoo and I saw a bear, a zebra, a hippo, etc. We can change this off by using different conjunctions. So I went to the zoo and I saw a bear, but I didn't see a zebra. I went to the zoo, I saw a bear, I didn't see a zebra, but I did see this. We can change those up. Um, Other things that we can do, here's another example here. So this one is focusing on verb chain. I went to the park to play. I went to the park to play and run. I went to the park to play, run, and sing. So we're asking the children to choose the different word types to add in, keeping that context all the time, all the way through. Is it correct to give the verb words to the students and ask them to memorize because there are English teachers doing that strategy? Ethelinda, can you expand a little bit? I'm not entirely certain what you mean. Feel free to type in the chat box a bit more information for me and I will happily answer. Okay, so yeah, memory word chains are a great way of starting out with some guided production. There's a bit of freedom there. They're able to, yeah, Nihal, absolutely spot on. Yeah, it's then they don't become creative speakers. They do become very accurate writers. Yep, providing lots of opportunities for a little bit of creativity within a framework. We're saying here. So that's quite nice. It's a soft way of introducing production. Another thing that I love to do in the classroom is things like story building. So this activity is so much fun. I think one of the most useful tools that a teacher can have is simply a shoebox full of interesting pictures. Um, as we say, a picture paints 1,000 words. So, what this activity involves using um, different ways of creating stories. And the way that I use this, I will take a whole selection of different pictures in the front of my classroom. Maybe, possibly 50, 60, 70, 80 different pictures. I'll arrange my students into groups or pairs, and I will ask them to choose 4 pictures. 1, 2, 3, 4. They can choose any picture that they want to from my massive pile of pictures, anything that they think is interesting. And then what we do is we send them away, we give them their opportunity to work in groups, and I ask them to write a short story for me or tell a short story. They have to use all of the images that they've chosen in some way. So here, we've got a pirate ship, we've got a cave. Those two, they connect quite clearly together. Maybe the students go off and they find their way to a secret island on their boat. They park their boat in the cave. They come out and they discover in this strange land all of these animals and robots. But their story is up to them. Absolutely, they make one story, and then they create that out of all of those images. Other things to consider. I'm very, very aware that we are running out of time quite quickly. So, other things to consider. Integrate grammar across the curriculum. Grammar does not belong to English. And, in an international school or a bilingual school, the chances are that your students will have other lessons through English as well. So encourage them to notice in their other lessons things that you're studying in English or in your literacy lessons. Teach grammar in context always, but teach it in context as it's needed. So if you see something in the students' written and spoken work or the text that they are using that's unfamiliar, take a moment to just quickly bring that in. Teach it at the point of need for individual students, not just the whole class. So I think as teachers we do this instinctively most of the time anyway. If we notice that there's one student that has a particular question, then we will take that student to one side and work with them. If they need extra support, we will do that. In small groups, we will re-give the answers. I think we do it instinctively, but it's always good to remember. And of course, in an international context, we will always have students that are, not just English as a second language, but also English as a foreign language students as well. So think about what we can do. My final thought for today, I've taken it directly from the Grammar Rules box, from the Grammar Rules teacher's book, because I think it's so true. Have fun with grammar. Grammar is a lot of fun, and I will leave that thought there. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box now. Right, I've got a couple of seconds. I will try and answer a couple of questions. If not, then when is my next session? I'm not sure. We're coming to the end of the year now, so I will do this session again to do more times today, and then we will see how the schedule goes. What kind of activities can we use to encourage our students to use idioms in their daily conversation? Introduce them to them, teach them, but lead with why we use them. Um, and also be very, very careful, because a lot of the time, idioms are very changeable. And it always makes me, as a native speaker, laugh to hear how many times foreigners say it's raining cats and dogs, when I don't think I have said that in my entire life. So, yeah, choose carefully, teach them, and encourage them to use them. Just have fun with them. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to pass you back over to Federica, who is going to give you a little bit of information. Mwah, thank you for your participation. I will see you all again next time. Bye.
Thank you so, so much, Charlotte, for a great session. It was super practical and people just loved it. You're seeing some great feedback. So, thank you so, so much for such a great session. And thanks everyone for attending as well. It's really precious to us that you can spend an hour of your time. We know you're really busy with us. So, thank you so, so much for that. So everyone will get a certificate. You don't need to do anything. You just need to please be patient and do check your spam folder, because it sometimes ends up in there. Do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear what you think of our webinars. We'd love to answer to your questions if you have any. So do get in touch. As you can see, there's a link to our website there on screen, macmillanic.com/learning at home. But if you go also to macmillanic.com, you can find all of the information, and do get in touch with us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. So follow us and be in touch with us. You can find all of the information about the upcoming webinars. You can find the recordings of the webinars. So do get in touch. We loved having you here with us today. Thank you so, so much for attending, and see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.